Of all the design improvements in the 97 DeLorean, the one that I prefer most is the new full-size window design. The tiny windows in a regular DeLorean just don't cut it in the summertime. You have to run the air conditioning all the time, and drive-through windows are virtually out of the question. So when building the 97 DeLorean, we decided to put real windows in the car. These new windows were installed in standard DeLorean doors. No cuts or alterations were necessary. The windows are mounted in custom molded aluminum channels that are bent to match the contour of the door. They are then riveted in place. The windows were made by Pro Glass of Elk Grove Village, Illinois, who specializes in making plexiglass windshields for racing cars. The windows were made of 1/8 inch Lexan that was smoke tinted to match the original DeLorean color. Custom power window regulators were also fabricated. As you can see in the video, the windows go up and down very easily. They also offered the opportunity to stick your head out the window, just like my son is doing right here.
We're going to shit out about 10 pounds of seeds. Go to CO2 here.
Through there. 10 pounds of CO2.
Maybe the way the wind's blowing, you might want to stand over there since it's blowing.
John, you can go back in time.
He's over there now.
In late 2007, Brand Muffin Industries acquired a truly remarkable vehicle, the first all-electric DeLorean ever constructed. Built by the Tilley Foundation in 2005, the Tilley DeLorean was a sleek and sporty, zero-emission vehicle.
And is also the first DeLorean to reach a top speed of 136 miles per hour.
I will put in full-size power windows in this car soon. Hi, I'm Bob Brandis, and after 17 years of having full-size power windows in our DeLorean time machine, we're finally going to start on our second car to install full-size power windows. The first step is to take this window out. Before you do that, you got to get these panels off so you can get access to it. First thing you do is you roll the inside window down. The inside panel is held on by plastic snaps, and it's best to start by popping out these inside ones first, and that'll give you access to the front and back ones. So it's not all that difficult to do. Take a large screwdriver, and see how that one popped out? That one popped out. There you go. And get one more back here. There we go. Now the next step is to open the door and finish removal. So then you finish grabbing it and it unhooks from back here. Okay, so the next step is to remove the screws that hold on this part of the door panel. And that can be easily done with a large size Phillips screwdriver. Just make sure to save the screws so you don't lose them, because they are metric and they're a little bit difficult to replace at your local hardware store. Okay, once you have the screws out, the next part that has to be removed is this plastic trim piece, because there's bolts in here that hold this in, but you got to get loose to get this panel off. And this just comes up with this handle and lifts out of the door. Bear today. There we go. Okay, the next step is to pry out this switch so you can get to the other bolt. And once you got it out, you'll be able to see past the wires to the other bolt. So that's the first bolt you have to take out. Okay, so once you get those two bolts out, this handle is the next thing to remove. And once you do that, you pop these, and your door panel comes off. Now, if you've got one of the later cars that has the full handle through the trim panel, you might have to take that loose before you get it out. Okay, the next step is to remove the plastic sheathing that's actually designed as a noise control barrier. And the duct tape is not there from the factory. Normally it's just glued off them from the factory, but this door has been repaired. That's why you see it. Okay, there's two more screws you can take out now that hold the door handle mechanism in. Again, they're both Phillips screws. They use both threaded screws and sheet metal screws in the door, so keep it straight which ones go into threaded holes and which ones go into sheet metal. Now, in order to finish this, you have to remove these clips, and then this mechanism will come off, and then the plastic will come off. Okay, the clips are pretty easy to remove. You just pry them up like that, and then you slide that part out, slide that one out, and disconnect this connector. Okay, so once you have that handle off, you remove the plastic, and you now begin to take parts off associated with the original electric window. You may notice that this car has the Tobii power door lock mechanism already installed that we will have to remove out of the way so we can get to the window. Okay, so now we want to get to the window mechanism. In order to do that, you have to take this handle out and the screws that hold the power window motor. Okay, once you have that nut removed, then you can remove this handle, which is somewhat tricky. On some of the doors, the clearance on here is really tight, so if you simply pry this lower metal down on the door, then this comes right out. Okay, so once you have those screws out, the next thing is to take this out. And this has got a little tiny plastic clip here that you have to separate so you don't break it. And once you separate it, you'll be able to get it past that bar. And then this part will come out. Okay, so the next step is to remove this black strip that holds the weather stripping for the window. Disconnect your electric cable and remove all 6 of these screws. Okay, the next step is to remove this nut that secures the door handle to the power window motor mechanism. Okay, so next step is to get these 2 nuts off the window mechanism, and this requires some adjustment of the window with the power window switch and the power window motor. Once you get those 2 loose, you should be able to remove the power window motor. Okay, so next thing you want to do is take this bracket off the motor. It's held on by 1 screw now, that you'll frequently find is loose in cars. Okay, so once you get those 2 nuts off the small window, you pry the drive channel off of the window, and the power motor at that point becomes loose. So pull the wires out of the door here and disconnect them from the motor by pushing in and then pulling back. Okay, now this. And then you get the end shaft off of here. Window is removed from the vehicle. Okay, the next step is to remove this front bracket from the window, and that is held on by 2 bolts underneath of here. So you got to remove these 2 bolts right here. Okay, so once you have those 2 bolts removed there, the next thing you got to do is shove the bread box window all the way down into the door, and it comes loose. Then slide the bracket back in here. At the door. Okay, the next step is to remove the rear window bracket, and that again is held on to by 2 bolts inside the door, and these are very difficult to get to, but not impossible. Okay, once you get those 2 bolts out of there, the rear one slides forward, comes out just like the front one did. Okay, now that we've taken all those parts out of the door, the next part is to remove the glass. That starts by removing this factory seal on it and then cutting the urethane that holds it in. When you push your door down, you're going to find that it's a lot springier because you've taken a lot of the weight out of the door. So don't be surprised if the door springs up on you a lot harder than it used to be. Okay, just a word of caution. You've removed the unlocking mechanism from this door. If you close it now, it's going to be a real trick to get it back open because you got to pull 2 rods at the same time. So I don't recommend closing it. So the next step here is to remove this weather strip. You stick a knife under here, it comes loose because right now the factory glue is kind of dead after 30 years. And it comes out like that. Save this, because if it's in good condition, you'll use it as part of your full-size window installation. Okay, the next step is to cut the urethane loose from the door. Professionally, they have hot knives to do that with. If you can get a hold of one, that makes your life easier. Otherwise, get yourself a good sturdy knife and just start cutting along the door. And when you're done all the way around the window, you can remove it. Okay, so once you've cut out a lot of the urethane out on the window, you have to remove the front trim piece, the rear trim piece, and the headliner to get the window out. And what you do at that point, you push down on the window and it will go past the trim pieces, and if you have any sections left on that are still not cut, you can finish trimming those and the window will come out. And the last step, now the door's really springy now. The last step is the removal of this window, and you reach inside the door and you push it up to the top here, and then you can just pull it out of the door. And you have removed the window from the vehicle. So you can now start on installing your full-size power windows. Okay, the first thing you got to do is get a carpenter square. And after you've removed the window, you put it on here like this, and you mark your bottom line and your top line. And what we're going to do here is show you how to measure where this goes in the door. First thing you have to do is insert this in the door. Like that. And this will give you an idea. This has to be 11 1/4 inches back from this flat surface here. So you see, we wrote with a marking pen on the door where this 11 1/4 inch dimension is, and this comes off with just acetone at when you're done. So just to make it easier, it's a lot handier to write that on the door. And the same thing with your top dimension. That's again 11 1/4 inches from that point, and then you mark that on the top of the door. And then from this point, you measure another 23 1/2 inches forward from this one. And this is where it gets handy to have this in place, because your front dimension on the top has to be, again, 23 1/2 inches. But you need this H channel in the door in order to mark this front point. Okay. This is the front H channel before it's been drilled. This is just the mock-up for presentation. You insert that in the door, and as you can see, it goes right into in place for the front window. It's really important in this installation to make sure that these 2 bars are exactly parallel. So throughout your measurement process and your installation process, make sure these things always stay parallel, because the window rides up and down in this track, and if they're not exactly parallel, the window won't stay in the track. Okay, after you finish clamping it to the top, make sure it's perfectly lined up with the bottom. And then take an 1/8 inch drill with your electric drill, and then you have to drill a pilot hole or mark for this side of the H-track, and then another one for this side of the H-track. And once you've marked those, remove the channel out of the way, and then finish drilling your holes with your 1/4 inch drill on both sides. And just a word of caution, stainless steel is hard. Make sure you use new, very sharp drills and some lubricant on the drills so they don't go dull while you are drilling. Okay, so the next step after you've drilled your holes is to insert the self-threading pop rivets. This is a common piece used in a lot of the DeLorean fiberglass, but you're going to install those in each of the holes on the top of the door. Make sure you have a good rivet gun because it takes a lot of force to get these properly into place. Now these are self-threading rivets. They aren't like poplar rivets. You don't keep tightening them until they break off. You just compress it with your rivet gun until they're very secure in place. And then you have to take a pair of pliers and unscrew this pop rivet threaded part so you can put the bolt back and secure the H channel. Okay, after you've drilled your holes and put in your threaded rivets, then you put in your screws and secure this to the top of the door. Just be aware it won't go flush to the door because the pop rivets are above the surface of the stainless steel. So it'll get close, just make sure it's good and snug. Okay, so after you've secured the H channel to the top of the door, the next portion is to drill the holes to secure it to the bottom of the door. Fortunately, this hole is already in the DeLorean door, and you take a long 1/8 inch drill and you stick it through there and you drill right to the center of the crash bar that's in the door. Make sure you get the center of that. So after you finish drilling this hole in the crash bar, you have to drill another one, and that has to be 2 inches higher. So you can mark where that hole goes. It should be 1/4 of an inch in diameter when you're done to facilitate drilling the other hole in the crash bar. So here are some dimensions for the second hole. It's 1.75 inches vertical and 0.625 inches horizontal to the left, which is kind of the angle the H channel is in anyways. So this should get you really close to where the second hole should be drilled. Okay, so after you've drilled your holes, you have to unbolt the H channel again to see how close you were on drilling the holes. Okay, so after you've unbolted your H channel, you remove it from the door and see how lucky you were. In this case, it's about 50-50. This hole is on the correct side of the H channel. This one is not. We have to move this one about 1/4 of an inch to this side. So that means our top hole actually needs to be a little bit more, 1/4 of an inch over here, to get the right position in the H channel. Okay, here's our second re-drilled hole, and you can see they're both on this side now. And we are going to drill these out and put the threaded pop rivets in these holes and then rebolt it to the door, and this part will then be installed. Okay, on this demonstration door, the door handle is removed, and just as an interesting shot, you'll see the threaded pop rivet right through the door handle opening. Okay, we've put our threaded rivets into the H channel. We've reinserted it into the door. We've tightened up the upper fittings, and now we're going to put in our lower bolts. And to facilitate this, I took our original hole and enlarged it to 3/8 so our long 1/4 inch spin tight fits through the door. And this way we're able to tighten the upper bolt fairly easily. And in the other lower bolt, we use a universal 1/4 inch drive and tighten up the other bolt. Okay, we're starting on the weather strip that goes around the rear window. This is the stock DeLorean piece, can be ordered from the DeLorean dealer, and you glue it in with super black weather strip adhesive. I like 3M because it's really strong and it dries fairly quickly. So we've already put in this portion, and all you do is, we'll show you in a little bit, we put the glue on and then you put the weather strip on, then tape it on with good duct tape so it holds it in place, and then let it dry overnight. So to glue the weather strip on, you put a bead of the 3M contact cement on. And you don't want to use too much, but you need to use just enough to coat it. And you put it like that, and then you let it fall off like that because you want the glue to become tacky. And it gets tacky pretty quick depending upon the temperature. Okay, so we've let it dry a little bit so the glue becomes good and tacky, and then you press it up against the door, get it in place, and then what I like to do is to duct tape it on so it doesn't move while it's drying. Okay, and then you come back overnight. This is another picture of the weather strip installation using blue tape instead of duct tape. Okay, so the next step we're going to do here is gluing in this window into the door. And first part of that process is, of course, removing the protective plastic film, because this can't be on there if you're going to glue it in. Now I've already removed the back piece, and as you can see, when the front piece is removed, it's absolutely clear. In this step, we are going to install the glue to hold in this window. But we're only going to put it on 3 sides right now and caulk this later once the window's in place. So we take the same 3M urethane caulk that we used to glue in these aluminum U-channels, and we apply it on the stock DeLorean window seal. Okay, we've applied our urethane glue, and now we have to carefully insert the window. First of all, put it into the H channel, and then swing it around and press it against the urethane. And we have a block here to hold the bottom in. We have a few paint sticks, so that part is tight, and our center gap is maintained. And then lastly, clamp here. In the center of that window. The window is all over the place. Oh, it's gluey. Okay, and then you come back 24 hours later. The next step is mounting the rear window to the H-track. You start by putting masking tape on the edge of the window to help make sure you don't get excess 3M adhesive on the Lexan, and it also gives you a nice straight edge. Once the tape is applied, install the caulk to the side of the H-track and smooth out the bead. Let dry for 24 hours. Then from here we have a 1/2 inch U channel that extends to this point, and then it bends down and connects to the front H channel. Okay, so the next step is gluing in the 1/2 inch aluminum U channels that seal the top of the window. And we're using 3M super fast urethane for that. And here's a piece, and we want to lay a bead of the urethane on this piece of aluminum. And urethane is really good stuff once it's hardened. We put more of it at the top because it's gluing to the door frame. So in placing this up on the door, it's rather simple. You make sure it's tight to here and right there. And I like to use these clamps because they don't dent the stainless. And you can get these from Harbor Freight for $2 each. Okay, and then once that's dry, you can cut away the extra urethane. This is a custom jig for manufacturing the screw drive shaft for the power window motor. This jig is composed of 2 parts. One part is a piece of wood that was custom fitted to the exterior skin of a DeLorean door to get the exact radius. The other part of the jig bends the sheet metal to conform to this radius and holds the metal in place while the slotted 5/16 steel tubing shaft is epoxied to the window screw drive track. In order to secure the motor drive to the screw drive channel, it is necessary to braze 2 1/2 inch long 1/4-20 bolts to the back sheet metal of the screw drive channel. These bolts are mounted at a slight angle since the motor sits at an angle in the bottom of the door. You can see this angle in the picture. It is also necessary to add a foot to the bottom of the screw drive track. This foot mounts the screw drive track to the bottom of the door, and it's also used as a mounting surface for the copper tube that guides the screw drive into the screw drive channel. This copper tubing replaces the nylon tubing that comes with the stock DeLorean window motor. The stock DeLorean window motor tubing does not have enough of a bend to mount the motor on the inside of the window. So this tubing is replaced with copper tubing that has a bend of approximately 130 degrees. The radius on this tubing is also relatively short, but very similar to that on the stock nylon tubing. Mounting the drive motor to the copper tube is actually a fairly complex process. You have to have a jig to hold the parts in place, and then steel strapping has to be soldered to the copper tube and appropriate holes drilled so the steel tube mounts to the drive motor. There are actually 4 pieces of steel strapping, 2 on the top and 2 on the bottom, to secure everything in place. Once everything is mounted, it is test fitted in the jig to see that it drives properly into the tube. A custom bracket is fabricated to mount the motor to the bottom of the door. This bracket wraps around the base of the window drive motor and is mounted at approximately a 45-degree angle to the bottom of the door. It is bolted directly to the motor through a bolt at the bottom of the bracket. There is a steel bracket that mounts to the bottom of the full-size window that goes up and down. On the interior surface of that bracket, a metal plate needs to be brazed in order to screw the drive mechanism from the motor screw drive to the window. This bracket has to be flush with the interior surface of the metal bracket, so a special jig has been constructed to hold these parts in place while it is brazed to the front surface of the metal bracket. Once the motor drive and the screw drive track are fabricated, they need to be mounted inside the door. The first part to be put in is the screw drive track. The top of the screw drive track fits between the exterior stainless steel door skin. There is a gap at the top where this stainless is rolled over, and the screw drive track actually slides inside that gap. Bottom of the screw drive track is mounted at the bottom of the door, approximately in the center of the window area. This is test fit by rolling the window down and marking where this sits at the bottom of the door with the window in the bottom position and the screw drive attached to the window. Once that position is secured, the motor position will also be defined within the door, and you can drill holes from the bottom of the door into these components and mount them with sheet metal screws. These are the 2 screws, one of which goes through the stock mounting hole, that holds the bottom of the bracket that supports the tube channel for the screw spring drive. This is the lower screw drive bracket that mounts to the motor drive, and then from here it goes into the actual electric motor. This rear bracket is part of the channel that supports the screw drive, and it goes from the bottom of the door all the way up to behind the sheet metal in the top of the door. Okay, this is a prototype mock-up window that was originally used in designing it, and you can see how it slides down into the door. These are the 2 mounting screws that bolt the window to the spring screw drive in this shaft that goes down to the motor. If you remove these 2 screws, the window is actually removable from the car without taking out this track. There's a steel reinforcement that goes to the bottom of the plexiglass window to keep it straight. Okay, so we want to insert these screws, this screw into the window. Okay, so installing the front H channel This hole is pretty simple. You can just pilot hole it and put in your rivet. But this one you can't easily get a drill to. So what you have to do is mark this with an ink marker, and then you take it out, and then you drill the hole and put in the rivet, and then put it back in. But you can't directly drill this one with this thing in place. These are the front H-channel mounting screws. You can see where there's two of them, and they were marked as to exactly where they have to go, and they are pre-drilled. So what is done first is you drill an 1/8 inch pilot hole through the reinforcement channel here into the aluminum H channel, and you do the top one and the bottom one. Then you remove the H channel from the door. You drill 1/4 inch holes in the H channel and insert 1/4 inch threaded rivets. Then you enlarge the holes in the steel reinforcement channel here to a little bit more than 1/4 inch, so the bolts will go right through there. And then you put the H channel back in the door and bolt it in at the top and the bottom. Okay, so the last window to be put in the door is the little front triangle size window. Again, you apply your urethane caulk all the way around and inside the H channel, and then you press the window in to fit the space, tape it into location, and let it dry overnight. And then you can shape the urethane on the outside to give a smooth finish. These are parts of the bracket that hold the handle on the door. On the rear of the bracket there was also a piece of metal that was actually used to hold the original window motor mechanism in place. These bracket parts need to be removed because that's where the new window motor is actually present. I simply cut these off with a hacksaw. The window wiper channel on the interior of the upper portion of the door sometimes needs to be modified to fit the H channel. As you can see in these pictures, two separate grooves were actually cut into the channel in order to fit the H channels. The rear portion of the bracket also had to be ground down in order to fit the fixed rear portion of the window at the bottom. Driving a DeLorean with full-size power windows changes the characteristic of the car. It's no longer claustrophobic. You really don't need to run the air conditioning except during extremely hot weather. And it's great for going through drive-thrus and being in parades and waving at people. It acts more like a normal car with normal windows, so you can really enjoy your cruising experience in your DeLorean.